Hi, I'm with Dickon Pinner of McKinsey Company. Dickon, what's the message that McKinsey is trying to convey this year?
Well, the period after COVID-19 will determine whether the world meets or misses the emissions goals of the 2015 Paris Agreement. And with close to $10 trillion that will be spent globally, the post-pandemic recovery represents a unique opportunity to create a new normal for sustainability and climate change. And we see two important areas of focus for governments, investors, and business leaders. One is adapt to the risks that are already locked in, and two, obviously, mitigation to net zero to prevent the further buildup of risk. On adaptation, the pace and scale of capital deployment we needs to increase significantly to manage the rising levels of risk that we see for the warming that's already locked in. And key adaptation measures include protecting people, hardening assets, reducing exposure, and ensuring that appropriate financing and insurance mechanisms are in place. And all that while recognizing that capital formation around adaptation remains extremely challenging. On mitigation, every part of the economy would need to decarbonize. The good news is, our analysis shows that a 1.5 degree pathway is technically achievable, but the math is extremely daunting and requires dramatic emissions across all sectors over the next 10 years. And specifically within that, we're focusing on three areas. One is the brown to green transformation of the installed industrial base. So many people focus on the new capital, but we've also got to think through these multi-decadal assets that drive today's economy and are associated with millions of jobs. The second one is building carbon markets at scale and digital tracking. If all of this is going to work, we're going to need very deep carbon markets. And this is going to require verification and trust to pour the hundreds of billions of dollars each year into the markets. And it's going to be enabled through things like digital tracking and geospatial verification of natural capital offsets. And then thirdly, natural capital. I think we're going to hear a lot about natural capital this year, understanding the different roles that nature, particularly biomass, can play, is rightly rising on business leaders' agendas. And the challenge here is that the uses of natural capital are very diverse, like sequestration or sustainability, aviation fuels, alternative proteins, and the co-benefits reach well beyond carbon. So understanding the scalable solutions here, it will be critical. So that's a little bit what we're focusing on.
Great. And how do you think the events of 2020 have changed how organizations globally are confronting climate change?
I think we see three big shifts in 2020. One, an increased appreciation of risk. Amid a global pandemic, societal priorities have justifiably shifted to the health crisis and mitigating the impacts of economic devastation. But against this backdrop, we see another threat to lives and livelihoods, which is climate change. And the question many ask is, can we still afford to focus on climate risk and sustainability? And our belief is, in fact, we cannot afford not to. And so McKinsey research shows that, if we fail to adapt to dramatically reduce emissions, hundreds of millions of lives, trillions of dollars of economic activity, and the world's physical and natural capital are all at risk. So one is an increased appreciation for risk. Two, I think, is an increased appreciation of opportunity. A low carbon economy could not only drive significant emissions reductions, but will also create a lot of jobs and could actually be a way to accelerate out of the current crisis and create longer term financial and environmental stability towards that next normal of sustainability. And then thirdly, I think driven by both this increased awareness of risk and opportunity, the capital markets are really waking up. And these impacts are now being felt in equity markets, debt markets, public and private, because ultimately this is a question about capital formation and allocation. And in an environment where we have near zero interest rates, the returns from things like sustainable infrastructure, fast growing, sustainability focused businesses becomes increasingly attractive. So those are some of the shifts we're seeing in 2020.
Great, very interesting. So given that, why have you chosen Climate Week NYC as a key moment to push the work you're doing? And, looking at the postponement of COP26, how's this playing an important role for you in terms of maintaining your momentum?
We think Climate Week is an incredibly important reminder that what countries, businesses, and individuals do in the next decade will decide what world future generations will live in. Climate change requires courageous leadership and a willingness to confront and tackle climate risks alongside the other complex and compelling priorities. So having this week that is dedicated to this agenda, we think is absolutely critical to help leaders come together to devise solutions and strategies for how to deal with these things on a systemic basis. I think previous crises have underscored one important lesson. Yes, it is essential to focus on the near term, but it is also critical to also keep the longer term horizon in mind. Tackling climate change, we know, won't be easy, but it will be worth it to build a more prosperous, equitable, resilient, and sustainable world. So we're very excited about the importance of this event.
And finally, as a member of RE100, how's McKinsey been able to collaborate with other organisations that are seeking the same goals as you?
Well, in 2018, McKinsey became the first global consultancy to join RE100, and we're thrilled to do so. We set a target of reaching this by 2025 and have made good progress. In 2019, 95% of our electricity consumption came from renewable sources, compared, I think, to about 87% in 2018. Several of our offices began using renewable electricity for the first time, and we're contracting directly with providers or through the purchase of energy attribute certificates such as RECs. We also share what we have learned during our transition toward renewable electricity with our clients and suppliers and encourage them to make similar commitments. And then finally, I'd say we play a convening role across many industry associations to help with these challenges, because our belief is that many of these things can only be solved at the cross-company industry association level. So those are different ways that we're collaborating with others.
Fantastic, thank you. Thanks, Dickon, and really great to be working with you again on Climate Week NYC.
Likewise, Helen. Thank you so much.